So the new Legendary Arc 5 decks are out, and it is time once again for me to do another sealed event with my friends over at my house. So Michelle and I and our 4 other friends will be hosting this yet again. So I bought 2 copies of these. So there will be 2 copies of each deck for a total of 6 decks and 6 pilots playing them. And I wanted to go ahead and open one of these on camera and talk about the contents in there from a sealed standpoint, and then we'll do the duels this upcoming weekend at the time of recording and report back with how it went. So let's go ahead and crack one of these open. I'm very, very excited about this. I am a pretty big fan of Arc 5 in terms of the anime, but also the themes played in the anime. So obviously Phantom Knight here, but also DDD is one of my favorite decks. Lunalight is one of my favorite decks. And I haven't really had a chance to talk about Lunalight much on the channel since the new support last year came out. I just didn't make any videos about it. It was a rogue tier playable deck, and still kind of is. It's one of those decks you got to watch out for in any given format or run the risk losing to it. But in all honesty, the new iteration of Lunalights, the issue I have with it is not very fun to play. It has exactly one game plan, and if you get to that game plan, you pretty much win the game instantly. And if you don't get to it, you lose in a really feels bad kind of way. And so, as much as I like the new Lunalight cards, I have not had that much fun actually playing the deck, if I'm being perfectly honest. But, yeah, so we'll see how the new support changes anything or how I feel about it. It reminds me a lot of, Tenpai in that regard, I guess I should say. But we have basically a full power constructed quality Lunalight deck in here with, 3 copies of your best starter, multiple copies of your end boss, non-archetypal, non-engine cards like Foolish Burial Goods, Black Goat Laughs, a playset of Tenki, things like that. So if you wanted a rogue playable deck straight out of the box that you can take to a tournament, this is not a bad product to get because the Lunalight deck can hold its own. And if your opponent doesn't have a game plan for dealing with Liger Dancer, then you can steal a lot of games just off of that fact alone. So Lunalight deck quite powerful and may possibly be the most powerful deck in this box, depending on how things shake out. Next we have the Speedroid deck with the first reprint of the Crystal Clear Wing over Synchro Dragon, the level 12 ultimate Synchro Dragon boss monster. First time it's been reprinted since the course, I think it was Supreme Darkness that it came out in. And even though the new Speedroid stuff was never expensive or anything, I could never find a second copy of this guy. I have a QCR, which I think is probably going to stay in my QCR binder, but it's really cool to see a reprint of this in Secret Rare for this. There's also a new Speedroid card that's in here. This deck might be okay. It's probably not going to be playable on a competitive level, but in terms of the sealed environment, it'll probably hold its own. And it has the potential to be able to get over Liger Dancer if you can get all the way to your most powerful boss monsters. But one thing that's interesting is the sealed version of this deck does not include Crystal Wing. Why? I have no idea. Maybe they just didn't want to print Crystal Wing at common, but it doesn't have Crystal Wing, which is one of the most important cards, in my opinion, in this strategy, and is a card that can beat Liger Dancer in sealed, but they just didn't put it in here. So, and then lastly, we have the Performer Pal Odd Eyes deck, which this is, I guess, the second or third time that this has been in a structure deck form, because obviously we have the Pendulum Domination structure deck or whatever it was, not the DDD one, but the Pendulum Magician one before that, and then the Legendary Dragon decks having an Odd Eyes deck in there as well. So there will be a lot of the same cards in here as were in there, but then there's some new stuff, including an Odd Eyes Link 3, and there's also a common reprint of the Primite engine in here, because Odd Eyes Arcray Dragon, the vanilla, is such an important part of this deck. They were like, let's put the Primite engine in there. So in theory, this deck is also pretty strong. I think it's going to be the most difficult for our pilots to play, because my friends who are going to be playing this are not particularly experienced with pendulums. So I imagine they're probably going to have a hard time mastering this one. And gun to my head, I would say that the power level of these 3 decks is going to go kind of low, medium, high if you really had to make me pick. But they could potentially all be pretty evenly matched, and they're all going to be a little bit harder to pilot, a little bit harder to play than some of the previous sealed legendary deck things or sealed structure deck things we've done. and I'm hoping it'll still be a fun time for everybody. So let's go ahead and take a look at our promos here before we get into the decks. So starting from the last one of these, the Legendary Modern decks with the Mitsurugi, Sky Striker, and X-Saber cards, they released a little promo pack of certain cards that come in these decks in variant rarities, either Secret Rare or Starlight Rare. And that's what we have here. So there's quite a few of these I'm very much looking forward to getting, particularly for Lunalights, as you might expect. And we have the Secret Rare Odd Eyes Soul Blaze Dragon, which is a new card for this set. We have a Secret Rare High Speed Roid Clearwing Rider, which I'm not too thrilled about because I opened multiple of the original Ultra Rare of these from the set that it came out in, the Wind Duelist pack. And we have a Starlight Rare Lunalight Masquerade. That's pretty awesome. So I will probably be playing that in my constructed Lunalight deck for sure. That is really, really cool to see. A card that was previously just a common, I think, got a reprint as a, maybe as a, was that a common or a super, got reprinted as a secret and Starlight in here. So that is awesome. Also, these new Starlights with the new foiling technology just looks incredible. So those are our promos for this box. Let's go ahead and open the Performer Pal Odd Eyes deck first. Right here on the top, we can see a Secret Rare copy of Skullcrobat Joker, which is pretty cool. Just a little starter that searches on normal summon. And I, flick him on the table, unfortunately. So we got Skullcrobat Joker, got Odd Eyes Mirage Dragon, which is like the third time this has been reprinted. It was also a common in the Legendary Dragon decks. We've got Vortex Dragon, which is one of the most powerful end board pieces in the Odd Eyes deck. It is an Omni Negate, and it's pretty easy to make because you just really need to make a rank 7 and then link it off. When you link off the Absolute Dragon, it floats into this guy. The new Odd Eyes Soul Blaze Dragon, which I have not read yet, but I'm curious to check out and see what it does. Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon, the other Odd Eyes Synchro, was played in Tenpai, actually, and was a pretty interesting card in that deck. And then we have the first non-QCR reprint of Access Code Talker alternate artwork. So this artwork was previously only available in QCR in one of the rarity collections, and this is the first time it's seeing a wide release here. So Access Code Talker is a card that can beat over Liger Dancer and Sealed, but if your opponent still has the Liger Dancer board wipe live, they haven't used it that turn, they can just destroy this guy because he's not immune to being destroyed by card effects. We have Exceed the Pendulum, which is a nice reprint as well. And we have the new Odd Eyes Override Dragon, which is just... I think we know what Firewall and Odd Eyes got up to behind closed doors. This is a nice replacement for Electromite. It does a similar thing of advancing your game state without giving us back Heavy Metal Foe's Electromite, so I'm pretty happy about that. And then for the actual... main deck itself, they start off with the hand traps on top, which is interesting. So we've got 2 Droll, we've got Performer Pal Pendulum Sorcerer, 2 more Skullcrobat Joker to round out the playset, 3 Monkey Board, normaling Skullcrobat Joker, adding Monkey Board, scaling Monkey Board adding another scale, and then Pendulum Summoning is not a bad way to go in a simplified game state. Odd Eyes Persona Dragon, got a common reprint of Astrograph Sorcerer. How cool is that? The new Astrograph Sorcerer full art guy retrain in the Magnificent Monsters is going to be pretty cool. We've got 1 Ash Blossom. I think each of these decks has 1 Ash exactly. We've got Performer Pal Odd Eyes Dissolver. And then we have, I thought we had multiple of these guys actually, the Performer Pal Odd Eyes Synchron, but maybe I'm wrong. We do have multiple of the Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon. And I don't think this guy is like really that crucial to the deck, but he is better than the original Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon and synergizes with the Primite package. This guy is really good, Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon. It's a scale 12. And I think it lets you revive a guy or something like that, revive an Odd Eyes monster. Performer Pal Odd Eyes Butler and Valet. Performer Pal Gentrude, which is a card that I don't think I've ever seen play, but it was... a relatively recent wave of support. This was like Dimension Force from 2022. Performer Pal, Lady Yang? Performer Pal Odd Eyes Seer, that's the one that's the 3 of. We've got a Perulia. So we have 1 copy of each Charmy in the entire box, and it's one Charmy per deck. So it's Purlia in this one. I think it's Meowls in the Lunalight one, and Fua in the Speedroid one. We've got triple Sky Iris, Called by the Grave, triple Lordly Load, which is pretty crazy, a Primite, 2 Roars actually, and 2 Drill Beams. And now we move on to the extra deck stuff. So common Chaos Angel is really cool to see. Chaos Angel is also going to be pretty hard to out in this limited format here. And then we have some Exceeds, the Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon, Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon, Odd Eyes Raging Dragon, is also the Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon Overlord. Reprint of Raider's Knight and Arc Rebellion Exceeds Dragon, which is potentially another way to beat over Liger Dancer, because you can boost this guy by a huge amount of attack. I've seen it get over 12k before. And I'm actually play testing Phantom Knights right now as the next main deck I intend to play. So hopefully we'll get a Phantom Knight deck profile here soon. IP Masquerena, Beyond the Pendulum, and SP Little Knight to round that out. So fantastic reprints overall. I do think it's going to be a bit of a lower power deck compared to the other offerings in here, but we'll see. I might surprise myself with how well it plays. I'm just going to have to teach my friends how to do pendulum summoning and all the weird quirks of pendulums and maybe some combos with that deck. Here's the Speedroid deck, which I'm very much looking forward to. I've wanted to play Speedroids pretty much since this wave of support came out, and I have pretty much everything for it, really, except for a second copy of this guy. So now that I have this, I can play it. We have an ultra rare Speedroid Terror Top, which I think is the first time that this card's been printed in this rarity. There's QCR Terror Top as well, but I really, really like this. I think this looks fantastic. And ultra rare Takatonborg. Really cool to have a set of those. This is the brand new Speedroid card, the Daruma Knocker. I'll be curious to read that and see what it does, see how it improves the deck. It's a little Fortuner, which is nice. Kite Drake. Kite Drake was previously available in Secret Rare from one of the Battles of Legend, and also in Common from the Battles of Legend Complete Series or whatever, or Battles of Legend Chapter 1. High Speedroid Glider 2 was a Common from the last wave of support, so cool to see that here in Ultra Rare. And then High Speed Rubber Band Shooter as well was a Secret Rare from Dual Overlord or Battles of Legend, one of those, and was actually kind of hard to get, so seeing that back here in Ultra Rare is pretty nice as well. And then we move on to the main deck. We start off with an Effect Veiler and 2 Droll. All these decks have 2 Droll, but they may or may not have, Veiler, Zash, etc. We have 2 more Terror Top to round out the playset, as expected. Speedroid Double Yodo, 2 more Takatonborg to round out that playset. I'm not sure if you would play Takatonborg at 3 in a constructed Speedroid deck or not. Maybe you would. Speedroid Red Eye Dice. Den Daiko Duke. We have our Ash Blossom here, which I love is just intermixed with the other archetype cards. It's kind of weird. Speedroid Marble Machine. We get into the Pendulum ones. We have a Nibiru, 2 Nibiru in here, which is pretty nice. Speedroid Card Turbo and Ultra Hound. Ultra Hound, I think, was a super in that Wind Duelist pack. We've got the Fulos. We have the Speedroid Wing Synchron, which is the card meant to make the Synchro Dragons. And then the second copy of the Daruma Knocker at Common in here. This is true with a lot of the new cards introduced in here. So previously with the X-Saber cards, the X-Saber Polina was an Ultra and a Common in the same deck. Speed Recovery, 2 of those. We got Called by the Grave and Talents. Speedroid Wheel. Speedroid Scratch. We have 2 Imperm. Speedroid Duplicate, which I think is like a quick synchro on your opponent's turn. One of these is like a quick synchro, and the other one is like a pop or something like that. These are pretty good traps. And then for the other extra deck cards, we have the Clearwing Synchro Dragon, the Chambara, the Haguita, a printing of Charge Warrior, not in Gold Series. Can you imagine that? So we have Common Charge Warrior, and Charge Warrior is also available as a Secret Rare and Starlight Rare in the cover cards, the box toppers. So that's really, really cool to see a reprint of Charge Warrior that's not in Gold Series Rare. High Speed Red Puzzle. Clearwing Fast Dragon, his first reprint since Dual Devastator in 2020. High Speed Red Cork Shooter, which I think is played at 2, if I'm not mistaken. Crystal Clearwing Synchro Dragon, first time at Common. The Clearwing Rider and the Glider 2 and the Rubber Band Shooter as well. No Crystal Wing No Crystal Wing. It's really, really strange. And then finally we have the Lunalight deck, which is obviously the one that most people are excited about. This deck was never expensive in the first place. It was pretty easy to build this deck in full constructed quality. But having just the entire core, 3 ofs and everything at common, buy one of these, you have the entire thing, is really, really cool. We've got Secret Rare Tiger King, which may be the main Tiger King I play in this deck from now on, because this looks fantastic. It does have a little nick on the side here, which is unfortunate. Oh, we've got 2 of them. Never mind. I'll use the second one. So 2 Secret Rare Tiger King. We have an Ultra Rare Black Sheep, the first time this card's been available at foil. Same thing with Wolf, the first time it's ever been available at foil, so we'll probably be upgrading to that. Same thing with Emerald Bird. And then the new Scarlet Tiger is the new card here, and most people I know that play this deck say this card is kind of an unnecessary win more card and doesn't really do enough to matter. It probably will be included in the deck, and it does make getting poly a little bit more efficient, but I don't think it's going to be like a huge deciding factor that's going to take the deck over the top or really change the strategy that much. So we'll see what happens with it. I think it's a really cool card nonetheless. And it's not like they could really do much else with Lunalight, because if they make the deck too powerful, it's going to be a problem. You can't exactly be like, here's a Lunalight, like, link to that's an Omni Negate or something like that, or a thing that says your fusion monsters can't be tributed or something like that. They couldn't exactly do that. So Ultra Rare Cat Dancer, first time this card's ever been available in foil. It was originally just a rare, whereas Panther Dancer was an Ultra, and Leo Dancer was a super in the original Shining Victory set. So that's really cool to see. And then Saber Dancer, I think, was a super in the Duelist Pack 4, the Girl Duelist Pack, and then a common afterwards. So that's really cool to see as well. Again, the 1 Effect Veiler on top. We've got the 2 more Black Sheep to round out the playset. A pretty important card for searching poly. A lot of Lunalight decks play 2 to 3 of it. I think upgrading to 3 of it has become pretty common in lists as the deck has continued to exist post New Wave support. 1 Tiger, which I think is unfortunate. I think that we've reduced the copies of Tiger as this deck has evolved, but Tiger is one of the best cards in this strategy, being able to loop it back to your hand and revive a guy out of the graveyard, soft once per turn. Extremely, extremely good. 2 Kaleido Check, I think, is defensible. This guy is really easy to see, and sends to graveyard for cost, so it eats imperms all day if your opponent doesn't read it. We've got our Ash Blossom from this one. Yellow Martin, which helps us search the Masquerade. Tri-Brigade Fractal, which is, again, not even a Lunalight card, but they are really basing this structure deck off of what is played in Constructed with this deck, which is really cool, because Fractal is played in the Constructed version of this deck, so it's really cool to see a reprint of that, especially if I wanted like another Tri-Brigade core lying around. Fractal is the one card that's a little bit harder to find, so I'm really glad to see that. Meowls, of course, which, Meowls does not see nearly as much play as the other Charmies, but it's really cool to see. We've got the play set of Gold Leo, which is really, really cool, so, you don't have to track down the secret rare anymore from last year. We've got Silver Hound, which is important for the combo. We've got only 1 poly, which is interesting. I would have thought for sure they would have given you more than 1, but you technically only do need 1 to do all your combos, so maybe having 1 is fine because you don't want to draw more than 1 or brick on it. Foolish Burial is crazy in this deck. 3 Tenki. Tenki is a little bit rough in this deck because of Droll, so I don't really think that Tenki is the best card to hard open with, because it plays into Droll really hard, especially knowing that each one of these structure decks in Sealed comes with 2 Droll, so that might be a little bit of a problem. Lunalight Perfume is really good because of Perfume Dancer, obviously, and you can send it to the graveyard off of Foolish Burial Goods to banish it, discard a card, add any Lunalight, so really, really good that they included Foolish Burial Goods in here for that purpose. Called by the Grave, Lunalight Fusion, Crossout Designator, which you can only really use this for, like, Called by the Grave or Effect Veiler or in the Mirror Match. It's not really going to be that good here in the Sealed environment, but in Constructed, it's obviously really good. Talents, Pot of Prosperity. I would hesitate using Pot of Prosperity in this in Constructed, but maybe in Limited as a last-ditch effort, it's a good way to get you into more cards. Comes with Thrust, which is awesome. Heavy Poly. Like, they straight up did not have to give you this card in Sealed, but this lets this deck go crazy going second here in Sealed, where you can just pay life to send the Leo Dancer and make Liger Dancer easier. We've got the playset of Masquerade. Masquerade, I think, we saw the Starlight of that, so technically we got 4 copies of that, but they didn't really anticipate that. But yeah, one of the best new cards for this strategy. We've got an Imperm, Serenade Dance, which can also be sent off of Foolish Burial Goods to special Lunalight out of the deck, so that's really cool they put that in there. And then the Black Goat Laughs is another card that can be sent off of Foolish Burial Goods. So this is also a card that technically counters Liger Dancer, because if you Foolish Burial Goods and activate this, it doesn't matter that the Liger Dancer is unaffected. You are creating a rule for your opponent that your opponent may not activate the effects of a monster with that name. So that's how that works. Pretty cool inclusion in there. Then we have, of course, Panther Dancer, 2 Leo Dancers, the big boss herself, the Liger Dancer in 2, which is important to your final combo, Perfume Dancer at 2, Outer Entity Nyarla, which is interesting. Shoutouts to YCS Atlanta 2019, when I was playing the Lunalight Danger deck with Azathoth to do the Phantom Knight rank up magic, and Azathoth my opponent out for a turn. Was really, really cool. And we did using Time Thief Redoer. Time Thief Redoer would banish himself when he has monsters under him, come back with no material, Phantom Knight's rank up launch, and turn him into Azathoth. Was really, really cool. Almirage, Cross Sheep, SP Lil Knight are really important inclusions in this as well. And again, it's literally like everything that you would play in this in Constructed, minus like Baguska, but Baguska kind of is a very unfun card to play against. So that's what's in here. Let's go ahead and do the duels, and I'll talk about each of these decks and how they performed.
All right, so we're back with the results of the matches, and I do have to say, this went pretty much as we expected. Now, I gave the decks to the players that had, I think, the relevant levels of experience for them. To address the elephant in the room, or rather the giant lion woman in the room in Lunalight Liger Dancer, the Lunalight deck was the best deck by a lot. The other decks don't really have easy outs to Liger Dancer. The Odd Eyes one has the best chance of getting over her because they have 2 monsters that can get more attack than her in Arc Rebellion, Exceeds Dragon, and Axis Code Talker. But getting there is always a problem when you have the board wipe that can be activated as a quick effect. So the Lunalight deck is the most powerful. No surprises there. It's what a lot of people were assuming going into this product, and it is a problem when trying to play this sealed, but I wanted to still play it anyway and have everybody do their best. So myself and the other most experienced person in the group played the Perform Pal Odd Eyes deck because we determined it was probably the least powerful of the 3. And then the sort of middle experienced players played the Speedroid deck, and then the people with the least amount of experience or confidence play Lunalight. And I did try to get them up to speed on how the deck works and what the combos are, and they learned it magnificently. They did a fantastic job. But I figured that the best chance that some of the other players are going to have at countering the Lunalight deck is going to be on the Lunalight player misplaying, or by virtue of the hand traps included in the deck. So what I told the other players is the best way to beat Liger Dancer is to stop your opponent from getting to it, and that involves, of course, the hand traps that are included in these decks, and luckily they do include some, but not nearly as many as I feel like they could have included, and I did find that to be pretty frustrating. So if you look here at the Odd Eyes Perform Pal deck, it's got 2 Droll, 1 Ash, and 1 Perulia, and then it's also got like Called by the Grave for whatever it's worth, but very few hand traps, not even a full play set of any hand traps, and then it doesn't have any real board breakers at all. Nothing for going second. This one does not have Imperm like the other ones do. It doesn't have Droplet. I actually do not think there's a reprint of Droplet in this entire product, and so some of the non-engine choices are kind of suspect in this product compared to the previous Legendary decks. I remember in the Legendary Modern decks, the Sky Striker deck had like a playset of Raigeki and stuff like that. None of that is to be seen here. There are board breakers in some of the other decks, but this one I felt like it was pretty lacking. But one thing that's cool that this deck does include, of course, is the Primite engine. But if your best board breaker is like Primite Roar, then that's not really going to work against a lot of the strategies you're up against here in this sealed environment. But let's go ahead and talk about this. So how do I feel like this deck did? It did better than I expected, but it is still quite frustrating to play. There are a lot of different lines that can get you to some powerful end board pieces like Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon, which is an Omni Negate, or Chaos Angel, which is like a pseudo towers, or the new Link 3, the Odd Eyes Override Dragon, which is also a negate. That's probably one of the best cards in this deck, the new Link 3 Odd Eyes. That card is fantastic. It enables you to plus off of popping one of your scales and triggering your other Odd Eyes cards, like the Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon. It lets you draw an additional card, it gives you an Omni Negate, and it gives you a second Pendulum Summon. So this deck probably would not work without that card. The Arc Pendulum Dragon was really, really good. The Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon basically just searches it. The Skullcrobat Joker and Monkey Board, this is Monkey Board right here, you can't see because of the glare. I thought these were going to be really good, and in theory they are, but there were weird interactions where you're like, okay, this is a pendulum deck. Clearly I'm going to like normal Skullcrobat Joker and search something like Monkey Board and get another search off of Monkey Board for another scale and then pendulum summon and go crazy like we used to do back in like 2015, 2016. But things don't work like that anymore, especially because of not only the changes to pendulums after the Master Rule changes, but also just what's included in this deck. The Performer Pal Odd Eyes Seer is a weird card. So you kind of have to get a Odd Eyes in the graveyard in order to pop it. So there's usually a 2-card combo that includes Arc Pendulum Dragon and Odd Eyes Seer, where if you discard Revolution Dragon to get to Arc Pendulum Dragon, you put Arc Pendulum Dragon in the scale, you put the Seer in the scale, and then you pop it to add the Revolution Dragon from the graveyard back to the hand. You get a search off of as Arc Pendulum Dragon, and you get another Arc Pendulum Dragon off of discarding Revolution Dragon again, or you can search for Odd Eyes Persona Dragon, Odd Eyes Mirage Dragon. So that's some pretty cool synergy there, but what's frustrating is that effect of Odd Eyes Seer is very often not live, because it's hard to get a pendulum monster in the graveyard. So the Odd Eyes Revolution Dragon helps out with that. Also, the package of the Perform Pal Odd Eyes Valet and Butler was interesting. So Valet is a pretty good normal summon. He can Foolish Butler, and then Butler can pop the Valet to summon himself out of the graveyard, and that pop can trigger some of your other effects. It's frustrating how many of these pendulum cards require a card to be popped to do anything. And the first round of this ended up being a mirror match with me against the other person playing the other copy of the Performer Pal Odd Eyes deck. And I basically just bricked myself by getting myself into a situation where I had like two low scales, thinking I could pop it later in the combo, and I couldn't. It's very frustrating. Sky Iris helps with that, but again, it feels weird to kind of go 1-for-1 with a card, like pop a card you already have to search another card. It doesn't feel like it really gets you anywhere. It would really feel better if it was just a +1, but I get that that's maybe a little bit too much to ask for in a pendulum deck. Pendysork is really good. Astrograph Sorcerer is really good, obviously. The Dissolver is what you use to actually do the fusion summon for Vortex Dragon. It's one of the easiest ways to do it because you can fuse itself with Arc Pendulum to create it. Or you can overlay 2 Arc Pendulums on top of each other for Absolute Dragon, and then link off Absolute Dragon to get Vortex Dragon. I did that one time as well. The package of Before Pal Lady Angie or Lady Angie with Gentrude is really weird. So those two make up a pair where that has synergy. You discard Lady Angie and another pendulum to draw 2 cards, and if Gentrude is in the other scale, you can put her from the grave into your scale. And in theory, it's this advantage engine. It's also low and high scale, which is nice. But oftentimes you would end up with like just Gentrude and not draw the other half, and it would be really awkward. I don't really particularly like those cards. There's other things that I feel like could have been useful in this deck that they just did not include. Like, they didn't include the other Pendulum Magicians. So no Double Iris, no Black Fang or anything like that. No Pendulum Call. No Duelist Alliance. No Dark Worm. No Dragon Shrine or anything like that. I feel like if you were to include Dark Worm or something like that, this deck would probably be a lot better. And then again, like Pendulum Call and stuff like that to get to some of those other to search your pendulums would probably be a little bit better. But they just didn't include those cards for whatever reason. But I guess those other cards have had plenty of reprints in the past, whereas some of these Odd Eyes cards have only been printed one time prior to this. So reprinting it again is not the worst decision in the world. Weird, anomalous Perform Pal cards like Odd Eyes Seer, Odd Eyes Synchron, and then these four I don't think have ever printed. So I guess getting a new print of those is fine for maybe fans of the Arc 5 anime that wanted common copies of them. And then the Primine engine does sometimes win the game on its own. You know, having Drill Beam in addition to your end board is crazy. There was one of the games against the mirror match was I was watching him combo off, and he's setting up the negates. He sets up the Link 3. He sets up Vortex, and he has the Odd Eyes Persona Dragon, which is also potentially a monster negate on the field of an extra deck monster. And I'm like, show me Lordly Load in your hand and I'll scoop it up. And he had it. So it's like you are about to have more points of interaction on your end board than I'm going to have cards in my hand. So there's no point in continuing that game for sure. The Link monsters are all really crazy strong. Putting Access Code Talker in here almost feels like overkill, but it's really nice that it's in here. It's also the first reprint of the alt art for Access Code. IP and SP really good. Beyond the Pendulum, Exceed the Pendulum. The weird thing about Beyond the Pendulum that I didn't quite realize is that if you have Pendulum Summon before you make her, you're potentially pretty screwed unless you can make Exceed the Pendulum right afterward. But I was not quite used to that because with what I was used to playing Beyond the Pendulum in was the Yummy Soflacord deck, which I wish I would have played more of back in the day and done a deck profile on because that was a really fun deck, but then the Yummy cards got limited. You would get your second Pendulum Summon off of the Soflacord spell card, and you could Pendulum Summon into Beyond the Pendulum right after you make it, so the restriction is not a problem in that deck where I was used to it in, but here it ends up being a huge problem if you don't have all the material you need. So there are, like I said, some hands in this deck that just do nothing, or you don't get far enough to really stop your opponent from being able to kill you. The Xyz monsters, I personally never made Raiders Knight and Ark Rebellion, but I am making these a lot in Phantom Knights, which we'll talk about at some point later. But Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon Overlord won a couple of games on its own. So you just overlay it on top of regular Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon, and it can attack 3 times for 3,000 attack each, so that's usually an OTK on its own. I really did not even read regular Rebellion Dragon. I don't think it's nearly as good. And this is also a card from like 2015, and this is a card from like 2022, 2023, something like that. So it is, of course, an upgrade. And then none of us ever made Odd Eyes Raging Dragon. I think the only way to make Raging Dragon with an Xyz monster under it is to use the effect of Rebellion Dragon Overlord when it has been popped and it's in a pendulum scale and you pendulum summon it back. You can use it as to rank up into another Xyz monster, so you can make Raging Dragon that way with an Xyz material monster under it. But so we never made Odd Eyes Raging Dragon. I don't really know how you're meant to use Raging Dragon normally, or how it was used in the anime or anything like that. I'll have to double check that. I never personally I made it in testing the new Odd Eyes Soul Flare Dragon, the Synchro. But I never made it in this play session. But in theory, it seems like it's been potentially pretty good. So that's it for the Odd Eyes deck. It was pretty fun to play, but I do think it is pretty underpowered compared to the others. But if you're playing this against the Speedroid deck, it's probably fine. I did a thing where my opponent did make the level 12 Crystal Clearwing Synchro Over Dragon, and I was able to out it with, we traded negates with this guy. We each negated each other, and then I was able to make Vortex to try to bounce it off the field. And he was going to fire Nibiru at this point to get rid of everything I had, but Vortex was able to negate Nibiru. It was really, really fun back and forth, so really, really great game there. Alright, so now we're back with the Speedroid deck, and this one was really, really fun to play. I gave this one to the sort of medium skill level, medium experience players in the group, and they generally did pretty well with it. The cards included in here, some of the 3-ofs make a lot of sense, some of the 2-ofs make sense, but there's a lot of Speedroid cards that are missing from this, just inexplicably. The most obvious one in the extra deck is Crystal Wing. No idea why Crystal Wing was not included in this, especially because it is technically a way to get over Liger Dancer in Sealed if you gone through the Liger Dancer's board wipe already and you make Crystal Wing, it can attack over because it gains the attack of the thing it's attacking if it's level 5 or higher. But in the main deck, there's like no Colonel Clackers and some of the other new cards that were in the Wind Duelist pack. There's some of those cards, and then some of those are missing. It's weird how they've done this. But generally the ones that they've included are some of the best Speedroid cards. I think all of the main deck Speedroids are some of the best ones they could have given us. Although I think the one we never, ever, ever used was the Synchron, actually. We just never used this guy at all. The rest of them were all really, really good. Terratop is insane, as you guys already know, from all kinds of generic decks that Terratop has been crazy in over the years. So 3 Terratop, 3 Tuckatomborg makes sense. The new guy, Daruma Knocker, I think is really strong. It is a 1-card combo. So you send it and you send the Duplicate Trap, and the Duplicate Trap revives itself as a monster, and then you just link 2 for Rubber Band Shooter, and Rubber Band Shooter sends Stardust Charge Warrior, and you get to get one of 2 level 3 Speedroids from your deck to your hand. Now, the thing that frustrated me about that initially was the sort of random variance there, where it's like, if I don't get to pick which of these 2 goes to my hand, that's really bad, and makes for a very inconsistent game where you just kind of lose to variance. I did not like that. I want to be able to know exactly what I'm adding to my hand as part of my combo. But the Daruma Knocker's other effect circumvents that, because when it's sent to the graveyard for, just regardless of how, if it could be for a Synchro Summon or a Link Summon, you get to add a Speedroid spell or trap to your hand. So you can add Speedroid Scratch and just discard the card that you got off of that exchange and then search another, like a normal summon, like search like Marble Machine. That ends up being really good because if you basically want both of the cards that you get off of Rubber Band Shooter to be discarded. So you think of it less as a add 2, discard 1, and more of a foolish 2, which is still pretty good, but would have a add 2, discard 1 really have been that bad anyway? Because, like, come on. We have so many cards nowadays that are add 2, discard 1, whether it be Magnet Bonding or Synchro Fellowship or the Soul Accord one. So it's really not that big of a deal, but yeah, you're basically foolishing 2, which is still really, really powerful, because the Marble Machine can, let's say you send Terratop and Den Daiko Duke. Den Daiko Duke has a way to extend in the graveyard. You banish it and revive a Speedroid Tuner. And Terratop, if you discard that and then you go through Marble Machine, you revive Terratop triggers. So it doesn't really matter which one they give you to your hand when you are doing the line that way. They also included the best non-tuner normal summon Speedroids. So the Ultra Hound and the Double Yo-Yo are generally your powerful non-tuner normal summons, which you have, of course, your normal summon for turn and the additional normal summon off of Rubber Band Shooter. So the consistency and everything is really, really strong here. They give you everything you need. Just the payoffs are a little bit weird. So in the extra deck, they only have 1 copy of the level 12, the Crystal Clear Wing over Synchro Dragon, and then they have, of course, the other ones that it can float into, the bike and the regular Crystal Clear Wing and the other Clear Wings if you didn't use one of those to make that guy. But then no Crystal Wing, and then no other generic Wind Synchros that would make this better, because I'm pretty sure the Axel Synchro Stardust Dragon is probably really playable in this deck, and it's not included. You'd have to get that separately. High Speed Red Kite Drake is really good. Charge Warrior almost never summoning, because some of the players tried to summon it, but I don't think that was particularly good, because it's normally the thing that you want to get rid of off of Rubber Band Shooter. But you can also get rid of one of the 5s and get potentially Marble Machine as one of the things you add. But the other 5s, Glider 2 is obviously really good. There is a Glider 1, by the way. It's a Pendulum monster. I had to look it up. Glider 2 is necessary for making the level 12, so you usually always go into this guy at least once over that combo. And Chambara is decent for closing out games, OTKing, because it attacks twice if you just need additional damage on board. But the other 5s are almost Hagoita. We're never making that guy. Puzzle, we're never making that guy. He's a 4. And then Cork Shooter is really good. It's a 3 that adds a spell or trap. So Cork Shooter is crazy, but we're almost never making these other 2 right here. We're probably never making the second glider. And I think I saw Kite Drake summon like one time, although Kite Drake is in theory pretty good. The other thing that's really cool that the Speedroid deck has going for it is it has probably the best non-engine in this whole product. So if you look at this, it's got like way more hand traps than the Odd Eyes deck had. It has 2 Droll, 2 Nibiru, Veiler, Ash, and Fua, and it has Talons Called By and 2 Imperm. So the non-engine in this deck is crazy compared to the other ones in the product. It's still probably, I'll be honest, not enough to stop your opponent from getting to Liger Dancer in the Lunalight deck, but 2 Droll definitely helps a lot, and then the other cards help tremendously as well. So probably the most well-rounded of the decks in terms of the non-engine. So very, very happy to see that. And the deck performed just fine. So I'm curious to see what this is going to look like in Advanced Constructed. And I really would love to be able to play Speedroid in Genesis as well. But I think it is just so far below the power level of the other Synchro decks because you can't use the Pendulums and you can't use Rubber Band Shooter. So this unfortunately is meant for Advanced Constructed, but it's pretty weak by the standards of Advanced Constructed. Hopefully Daruma Knocker does make the deck a lot better, and I'm excited to kind of tune up my Speedroid deck in Constructed, no pun intended, with Daruma Knocker, but I don't expect it to be crazy, but I do expect Daruma Knocker to probably be a 3 of, so we'll see how that goes. All right, and lastly we have the Lunalight deck. You know, what really surprised me about this product, the Legendary Arc 5 decks, is just how much the Lunalight list is not just like a random assemblage of crap that they thought would work for like a structure deck, like what we would have gotten kind of back in the day. This is like specifically built around what was played in Lunalight in Advanced Constructed, and this is not like what Konami thinks the deck would play. This is like what players actually played in this deck last year when it was more competitive. It's still on the fringes of Rogue right now. I think I talked about this in the earlier segment of like, this is a good deck to probably take to locals if you are just getting into the game and you want to steal some wins, because if decks do not have a plan for Liger Dancer, they do just kind of auto lose to it. It is kind of just a fact of this deck. So that is something that's really cool about this. So, but again, the specific card choices that are in here are highly based off of like what people played in Constructed in this. So the fact that it has Foolish Burial Goods, which is used to send either a Lunalight Perfume or Lunalight Serenade Dance, Heavy Poly, Tri-Brigade Fractal, as well as a hyper-specific example of like Fractal was played as a one-of because it's basically just an additional copy of Foolish Burial, an otherwise limited card. And it sends the Silverhound, which gets you a special summon and really gets your combo going. Even in the extra deck, the fact that it comes with Time Thief Redoer, Tiger King, which shout-outs to the factory error at the beginning of the video. The fact that I pulled 2 Tiger King in there when it was always supposed to come with 1 was pretty cool. But yeah, Time Thief Redoer, Nyarla. Nyarla never saw play in this when we played it. Nobody ever made it, but Nyarla was played in older Lunalight decks before the current era of support. And then if you go all the way back to YCS Atlanta in 2019, I brought Lunalight, Danger Lunalight to that event and was doing the Time Thief Redoer into Azathoth combo with Phantom Knight, Rusty Bardiche, and all that. And that was fun for me, but not for my opponents. And then like Salamangreat Almirage being in there as well is like very much like an Advanced Constructed thing. SP Lil Knight, Cross Sheep, all of that stuff is like, this is a constructed level Lunalight core. The only thing that's really missing is like some of the non-engine. You could probably just like buy this product and add the other 3 copies of Ash Blossom, or the other copies of Ash Blossom and like the Fua and all that stuff in this, and take this to locals out of the box. It is just that good. The other thing that's crazy about this is the hand traps that come in this in sealed for your matchups in the sealed event. Not that great. It's got Meowls, 1 Ash, 1 Veiler, and then it has Imperm. But the other like non-engine that are not hand traps are really crazy. So it has the Talons Thrust Crossout Called By, and it has Black Goat Laughs, which is a really interesting card that actually is one of the only ways to counter Liger Dancer in this sealed environment, and they give it to the Lunalight deck, which is really interesting. It is a good card in the Lunalight deck because you can Foolish Burial Goods for it. You can discard it if you draw it with many of the discards that the deck has. and you can just declare a card name, and your opponent cannot activate the effects of that declared name. So the fact that Liger Dancer is unaffected by it, it still shuts off Liger Dancer's effect. And so if they had put that in a different deck in this sealed product, it would have been better for the sealed play, but I know they didn't exactly make this with sealed gameplay in mind. But yeah, so this was insanely powerful. Obviously, it was probably the best deck out of the three, and it's not really surprising to see why. Cross-Out Designator in Sealed doesn't really have many other targets unless you're in the mirror match. Otherwise, you're just hitting Imperm, Veiler, or Ash in the, or even Called By. You can hit Called By, but those are the only cards you're hitting, and you're only really hitting them in very niche circumstances. I think we had one cross-out for Imperm in the entire event yesterday, and that was it. So yeah, this thing is insanely powerful. I want to make some content about Lunalight soon, because historically it's one of my favorite decks of all time, but I did not make any content about the new support when it was brand new, because unfortunately, you know, I was getting out of a phase of being out of Advanced Constructed for a while. I'm a little bit more back into it now, but I was definitely really out of the game when this deck came out, and I got the new support, played the deck, did have some success with it, but it is just not a fun. It's not fun. Like, the problem with the new support is, like, if your opponent realizes you can get to double Liger Dancer, they scoop. And if they know that they can stop you from getting to double Liger Dancer, or if they have an out to it, it ends up being like just a really feels bad loss. And so when I played this last year, summer of 2025, it just ended up being a very unfun deck to play, and so I didn't make any content about it, and didn't play it enough to really feel confident making content about it. But this summer, I've made a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh content and having a lot of fun with it. So the next main deck profile, of course, is the Phantom Knight deck, as the map may indicate there, but having a ton of fun playing Phantom Knights. And after I do the deck profile on that, I will tune up my Lunalight deck and talk about Lunalight in Advanced Constructed with the new card, the Scarlet Tiger, which I don't think changes the deck a whole lot, but I kind of want to bling out my Lunalight deck with high rarities now that this product is out, and play a little bit more and like try to fall back in love with the deck, but also talk about the implications of this product in Common Charity and Genesis. So Common Charity is just royally fucked. Like, this deck is completely playable full power in Common Charity. I don't think there is a single card you could play in this deck in Advanced Constructed that you could not play in Genesis, other than like Dominus Impulse is like the only card that you would play in Constructed and Lunalight that you can't play in Common Charity. I'm sorry, because everything else, the Goldleo, Masquerade, Perfume Dancer, Liger Dancer, everything is available at Common. So Common Charity is completely borked. Probably has been since these legendary decks have been a thing, because all the Charmies are at Common. Sky Striker is probably a tier 0 deck in Common because of the legendary and modern decks. But I do want to at least talk about that. And then in Genesis, I saw some lists recently where people are playing Lunalight in Genesis, but they are taking out Liger Dancer entirely and making it more of a rank 4 deck going first and a Leo Dancer OTK deck going second, which I can really get behind, because that ends up being like a more retro style Lunalight deck, very similar to how it played back in the day. And I'll probably also remake the Lunalight Toss format deck, the Lunalight Orcus deck, with all the redundant multiples of all the Lunalight cards I have now. But yeah, I just kind of want to talk about that. So I will make a separate video later on, probably in a few weeks, talking about Lunalight in Advanced Constructed, in Genesis, and in Common Charity, and sort of the implications there. But that pretty much does it for this video. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.